Welcome to PSYWAR Profiles, where we take an in-depth look at interesting individuals or groups that make up the PSYOP regiment. With us today, we have three currently serving PSYOP captains who came from the infantry branch and joined PSYOP. Infantry is the single largest contributor to the Psychological Operations Regiment, with approximately 1 in 5 officers that come from the infantry branch. Welcome, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming and talking to us today. If you don't mind, please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about you.
All right, thanks, Master. My name's Eric. Born and raised in Vermont. I went to Norwich University, where I majored in history and political science, and then I commissioned in the infantry. Did airborne, ranger school, all that stuff down at Fort Benning, and then I was assigned to 1505 Parachute Infantry Regiment in the 82nd Airborne Division here on Fort Bragg. After doing that for about 3 or 4 years, then I transitioned over to PSYOP, and here I am.
Okay, starting 82nd. I like that already, so we'll move on to the next. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Connor. I was born in Michigan. I went to Michigan Tech University.
It's all right. Go ahead, sir.
I got a mathematics degree. Through ROTC there, I joined the infantry, airborne school, ranger school, and I went over to Germany. I was stationed in Grafenwehr as part of the 2nd Stryker Cavalry Regiment, and then after serving my time in the infantry, I joined PSYOP.
Okay, well, the whole Michigan piece, I don't know if we can keep going because, I'm Ohio State, so Ohio boy, born and raised.
But stationed in Germany, tough life.
Right. So, last but not least, sir, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Master, I just want to let you know I'm a huge fan of PSYWAR. Just want to start with there. Thanks for having us on. We're all really honored to be here, especially this guy here. He's a long-time listener. first time on the show.
Yeah,
so,
no, appreciate it.
My name's Dave. I'm from Western New York. I gained my commission through ROTC through Syracuse University, where I majored in business. From there, like these two other gentlemen, I went down south to good old Fort Benning, Georgia, and did the infantry officer basic course, and then went to jump school, ranger school, and then ended up over serving with 2-7 Infantry over in Fort Stewart, Georgia. And then from there, I came up to Benning, or up to Bragg rather, and joined the PSYOP regiment.
Awesome. We appreciate you guys coming out today. Definitely. I'm excited to hear some of your experiences. I hope some of our listeners out there can relate. We've got a robust amount of experience, Bragg, Germany, Fort Stewart. So there's a lot of different, when you talk about the infantry, the layman doesn't really make a difference between the different types of infantry. And so that'll be nice to hear a little bit about that. And then, how you got to where you're at today. So again, I appreciate you guys coming out and talking with us today. So first kind of topic, how did you get here? How did you get in the Army? Like, where did the desire to come in the Army come from, and then why the infantry?
So, for me personally, honestly, I just kind of always knew, and that sounds, I think, like a cheesy answer, and it's probably embarrassing, but every year for Halloween, like every single year, I was a soldier until it was socially unacceptable to dress up. So that's part of it, and I remember back to being like, probably like 12 or 13, and like Veterans Day and Memorial Day were my 2 favorite times of the year, because on cable they would just play like The Dirty Dozen, Bridge over River Kwai, all those like classic war movies, and I would just sit and like watch all of them like a million times. So I just always kind of knew that was what I wanted to do. And then so I went to Norwich, which is a military school, because I was new, so I wanted to take that step. When I was there, when I was getting close to picking my branch and what I was going to do, I had done well enough in school and everything else to be able to get whatever choice I wanted. So that wasn't an issue, but I was torn between military intelligence and infantry. I thought I'd be more interested in intelligence. I thought that would be a really cool field to be in, and I would have a lot of different exposure to new and different stuff. But there was kind of like a little voice in the back of my head that was like, hey, if you skip out on infantry, and this is just me, and I'm not trying to disparage any other branch, but you're going to regret it because you didn't take the hard path. And so that's why I wanted to do it. I kind of wanted to prove myself, as a soldier that was taking on like the most hardships and the most risks and doing those things. And then maybe later in my career I could do something different. So I kind of got a little bit of both worlds. I was able to do, I branched military intelligence with a detail in infantry. And for the people who might be civilians that are watching this, that means that once I finished my lieutenant time and became a captain, instead of going to the infantry captain's career course, I would go to the intel captain's career course. But I would still get that platoon leader experience, in the infantry, and that's really what I wanted, to lead soldiers in combat, and so that's the route I took.
No, that's interesting. For me, I did the infantry on the enlisted side before I came into PSYOP, so I feel some of what you're talking about, that wanting to, when people look at the Army, they think, well, infantry, that's what everybody does. And while everybody does get the basic soldier skill through basic training, not everybody lives the life of an infantryman. And so it's a very unique perspective. And for me, it was exciting, and I feel grateful that I went through that path initially in my military career as well. So how about you guys? Anything that maybe strikes a chord, or?
Yeah, like Eric was saying, I used to watch all those movies. I think Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he sold me. And my parents were also in the military, along with both my grandfathers. It's either Marines or Navy. I was just the oddball that happened to join the Army.
Okay, well, you're here.
Yeah, well, for me, actually, I was the first person ever in my family, since they immigrated to the United States, 100-something years ago, to ever serve in the military. So it's kind of a completely different experience for them to see that, and yeah. But I think you see that a lot. You guys are first timers, and guys that have a long tradition of military service.
Right. I have a lot of family that kind of have that lineage. How was that, especially when you told them you were going to work with the infantry?
Oh, they were definitely very proud of me. My mother was extremely concerned. When I told her that I branched infantry, she was just still learning some of the lingo. She started crying. She was like, "Why are you going infantry?" And I was like, "Well, it sounds a little different, but hey, it's what I want to do. This is my dream, and this is the path I'm choosing." But I've always gotten support and respect for that, even though sometimes it's hard, for our loved ones to accept those things that you do. So
it's almost as bad as being from Michigan.
I wouldn't say that. Tom Brady, the greatest football player of all time, went to Michigan. So
the cheater, sure, maybe.
It's not debatable, but okay, we'll let it
go. And then yourself, sir. What?
For me, these two gentlemen were saying, my family, my father, he fought in Vietnam, so there's that military background there. But like you mentioned before, when you look at all the movies and stuff like that, you're not really, you don't get a good look behind the curtain of how many people are supporting that one individual that's in the field. So in your mind, the infantry is what you're doing when you join the Army. So I guess at a young age, I just became comfortable with the thought of, if I do decide to sign my name on that line, that I'll be okay with being in the infantry. But as I decided to go into the ROTC program, well, let me back up before that. Actually, originally I just wanted to straight enlist because I think all of us are old enough to remember 9/11 happening and having that strike some kind of chord with you, and anybody who signed up after that happened, you really can't question their patriotism as far as I'm concerned, because that there's a good chance that you're going to be in harm's way.
Right.
So I guess I made peace with the fact soon after that if I'm going, then I'm just going to go all in, and that's what I did. But my parents, because like I said, my father, he served in Vietnam, and he wasn't really excited with the idea of me going straight enlisted, because he wanted me to see what other opportunities there were as far as getting money for school and getting commissioned as an officer. So we kind of compromised, and I did my 4 years of schooling and became an infantry officer, and then I went after that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it went for me.
I'm interested in the dichotomy with that. Your father was in Vietnam. Was he also infantry?
He was in communications, but I'm sure there's quite a bit going on, because he was there from 67 to 68. So
yeah. And how was that? Knowing his experience was probably You know, there's plenty of movies out there. You know, you've all mentioned the movie of some shape or fashion, but there's a lot that's out there on Vietnam, and just the amount of time. You know, our current era is very similar to that current era. You know, what was his reaction to you saying, "Hey, I'm going to go be an infantry officer"?
I think he probably was able to look at me and kind of see the lens that I was looking through at the current situation. It's just a naive young kid that just wants to go out there and be that one-man army type of thing. There's a difference to when you actually put the uniform on and actually you see just how wars are fought. And
right.
It's not like a video game or a movie. You can't turn it off and get sick of it. You know what I mean? So you're living that life. So he knew that, and once all the dust settles and stuff and everything kind of gets old, it's like you're still there. So you have to know in your heart that that's really what you want to do, and you have to go for the right reasons. It's not for personal gain or whatever. You have to, if you truly want to defend and serve your country, like I think that has to be at the heart of that decision. Because it's if you want to make money or whatever, like no amount of money can bring your kid back or anything like that.
Right.
If obviously the worst happens, so you have to definitely make that decision with both eyes open. So I definitely did my research and still decided to do what I did. And I'm happy I did.
All right. No, it's definitely good, unique perspectives. That's one, because I have a young kid. I don't know if you all have kids yet. And my father-in-law was a career infantryman. I spent time in the infantry, and for me, it's going to be a unique conversation once my son, gets to that age. Is that the step he's going to take? Is he going to follow those same footsteps? Because there's a lot of lineage, like some of you guys have, and influence. So it's interested on how I'm going to feel on that side of the conversation, because it's a different perspective. Now you're talking to your child versus talking to your parent or somebody else. And I think the point you made it was very, very true. There's no respawns in life. It's real life. So you're making a very conscious effort to put yourself in a very unique perspective, ideally harm's way, because that's what infantry is designed for. And so, kind of moving on, you hit a career point. You guys are lieutenants, senior lieutenants, maybe captains, and all of a sudden you're making a left and right turn in your career, whatever that is. Did something happen in your career fields or in your lives that prompted you to look at PSYOP as an option and to make the decision to come into PSYOP?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start. For me personally, like when I showed up to my first unit, I was very proud to be there. So 1st Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, they're the only regiment to jump into all four, or do all four combat jumps in World War II. Right, it was an incredible lineage to be a part of. And then when I showed up, I think it was 2012. The unit itself was full of great guys. The leaders there were amazing. The NCOs were awesome. And I really liked that. But as time went on, I kind of had like two epiphany moments that I realized that even though that I was, I had gotten to where I thought I wanted to be, there's things that I wanted to be different, or different things I wanted in my career that I wouldn't get if I stayed where I was at. And so the first one was we're at JRTC, which is a readiness training area that a lot of units go to. It's
everybody's favorite place to go when they're not deployed.
Yeah, it's probably one of the worst places in the world. And our unit had been on something called GRF, or Global Response Force. I'm going to change the name again because they do it every like 2 or 3 years. But it was really hard being on that because you have to be on a recall, like in case you get the phone call and you got to show up and put on your parachute and like fly somewhere and jump in and stuff. And so we had a very high state of readiness. So there was lots of training, lots of stuff maintaining of our equipment, and that went on and on and on. And we went through almost like 2 or 3 years of this cycle of just nonstop training, and it really started wearing on my morale and the other guys because we joined, to fight,
right.
to go places and defeat our nation's adversaries. And here we were just, going to go fight the fake enemy at the training center again. And so The second rotation, I was an OCT, which is like an observer controller trainer. So we were watching another unit go through, and so I was coaching them because I was like a more senior lieutenant at the time. And it's about 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm sitting on a log, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, looking through these like manly broken nods at a platoon of guys just staring at the woods pulling security.
Sounds like a blast.
I look at my watch and I realize that I have 5 hours left before my shift changes, and I know because I stand in all the briefs and stuff that they're going to be here like for the next day.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting on that log and I'm like, dude, like I am not in like the right spot. Like, I'm not in the right place. Yeah, I have all this education. I have all this training. I've excelled in all those things. I was, I think, when I left, and at that time, I was like the number 2 lieutenant in my unit. Like, which still irks me. I was a number 1, but like I wasn't like a poor performer. And no matter how well I did, I was still going to be in this organization. And looking into the future, you know, I'm like, well, am I just going to go to the Captain's Career Course and be shot off to another infantry unit somewhere and go through the same thing again and again? And so that was the first time where it's like, I can be in a place where I can have more impact and I can take my skills and my talents and I can apply them. And then the other thing that happened was we finally did get that deployment, right? It came down on Thanksgiving like break, and it's like, hey, in 2 months, we need you out the door and we need you to go to Iraq. And so we were pumped up,
stoked,
like,
ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's game on.
And so we were doing everything we needed to do in that short amount of time. We got the pretty much the whole battalion out there. But when we arrived, the mission that we had been assigned was guarding an airfield in Iraq. And that was the most boring mission you could possibly be assigned. Our guys were in towers behind an outer layer of towers that were guarded by like somebody else, right? And for 9 months, everyone just sat there and just looked at the desert and wrote reports and cleaned their weapons, and like that was it. I personally was very fortunate. I got separated. I got put on a different task force, and what we were doing is we were working actually out of like a palace in Baghdad, but we were coordinating airstrikes against ISIS. This was in 2015. And in a 6-month period, we killed 600 ISIS fighters. So I was really like proud of like that fact. Like we were going after them. We were a key part of like making sure that like we weren't killing the Iraqis. We were getting the bad guys, and we were facilitating that link because, you know, we would basically like we were deconflicting the ground part of it. So initially, like I said, I was very happy with that. But then towards the end of that rotation, I was like looking at like all the stuff we had done, all the enemy we had killed, the vehicles, the heavy equipment, like. It seems like on paper a staggering amount.
Right.
And when I looked at like where we were still at operationally, though, I was like, I don't think anything has changed. And it looks a lot like that saying that a lot of military guys say is like mowing the grass, right? Like you're just, you know, lopping off the tops, but it's still going to grow back, and you have to do it again the next week and the week after, and so on and so forth. So I didn't really feel like we had an impact, and so that made me also want to look to like, hey, is there a different like field or possibility that I could, you know, work myself into where I can like do more and I can like harness everything I have to offer, because I felt like where I was currently at was only like tapping into like a little bit of what I was really able to do. I'm not sure like what you guys think about, if you guys had similar experiences or what.
Well, like you were saying, like, hey, you know, it's like we're mowing the grass, and I've had this conversation a couple times with like some people. It's like I would rather influence a population to, you know, stop, you know, fighting, you know, stop war, stop conflict, than to have to go and kill them. You know, it's
Right.
like, yes, we did join the infantry to close with and destroy our enemies in
Right.
close combat, but we would rather have peace. You know,
Right.
And I think PSYOP could do that. And that's why one of the reasons I joined. I don't know about you, Dave.
No, it's well, like you guys said. I mean, Eric, as you pointed out, you know, you got your deployment. Everybody was pumped up. You know, I had a similar experience. I had my deployment. I went to Afghanistan. I was working with CJ Soda for 5th Group. I was a battalion scout platoon leader at the time. You know, after that deployment, I felt like I basically had checked the blocks that I've accomplished everything in the Army that in my near to midterm goals that I came to accomplish, right? And when I first joined, I didn't go in thinking that, oh, I'm going to be a careerist. I'm going to do 20. I wasn't sure, so I always kept both eyes open and trying to see where different opportunities were. And once you go over there and you get a deployment done and you, like Eric was saying and Connor was saying, like, how much of an impact did you make? You're not sure, because how many years have we been over in Iraq and Afghanistan at this point?
Right.
I mean, it's been going on 19, going on 20 years now.
Yep.
There's been ongoing, like, legit conflict going on. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you can't shoot an idea, but with PSYOP, you can actually make a difference if you do it right. You can influence a population to get one step closer to some kind of a resolution where seeing people blow themselves up on a daily basis isn't an everyday occurrence. It's I guess I I remember being in a gunfight and having civilians walking behind my position, and there's bullets going by, and they're just walking.
As if nothing's going on.
Right, like it's raining out or something like that. It's just like, I don't know. When you get to that point, it's like, okay, something's got to
Find another way to achieve success.
So that's how desensitized people are to things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about it, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but there's a lot of different things you can do with PSYOP. There's so much like versatility to it. I guess maybe like where me and Connor are a little bit different. There's a lot of SYOPers who are doing some great stuff that are like really helps people out, inspires them, gets them, like improves their lives or helps us achieve our national objectives in a different way. But I was fully intending to go to PSYOP because I thought we could kill our enemies better. And more of them by using PSYOP. I just didn't feel like there's a ton of people doing the drone stuff. There's a ton of people that can like shoot guns and things like that.
Right.
But it's a very small population that's trying to approach the problem from a different direction.
Right.
And I wanted to get in there and I wanted to get in there. You know what I'm saying? So
oh yeah.
So that's kind of my way. And I think that from what I've seen in the PSYOP force, like you can go down different paths where it's like, you were doing stuff that's helping people that are in need. You're doing stuff that's helping people, like helping prevent a conflict or strengthen the country from falling into a conflict.
Right.
And then there's places, like Iraq and Afghanistan and some other ones where like, there's bad guys and like they got to get got, and so you're bringing
finding a way to find them.
And you're bringing a tool that no one else has, right? And that's one of the things I think is really cool.
No, definitely. It's funny because sometimes you get out with some of those units, and majority of them are kinetic focused, kinetic minded, and that's what they want. Oh, I got a PSYOP guy. All right, how do we get them to shoot? And, well, there's a bunch of different ways, but that is one of the things we can do. We like you said, Connor, we would ideally want them to surrender or not fight at all, but we have ways that we can have them, come up on the net, so to speak, and we can find them. So. It's kind of a unique perspective to be where you span the spectrum of operations to humanitarian and helping people stuff to trigger pulling stuff. It's a really unique job, I think, in that aspect. When you guys were thinking PSYOP, was there anything else that you may have been thinking about career-wise, or was that PSYOP? That's the thing I want. Nothing else. If I don't get it, I'm out of the Army. So
for me, at the time, and I know they do it a little bit differently now, but you put your top 3 choices for the RSOF regiment. So I put PSYOP, Special Forces, Civil Affairs. That was like my priority. And because the other thing too that really attracted me about it was not only does coming over allow you to have like more resources, more opportunities to deploy and do other things that really matter. But you also get a chance to be a detachment commander, right? So, when you're a platoon leader, you got like in the infantry, you got around like 40 guys or a little bit less, and that's who you lead. Well, once you go to the captain's career course and you're a company commander, and as you continue to go up, you get further and further away from that stuff on the ground, the field work and all that. Whereas when you go into SOF, you go and you lead a small team, and so you get like a second shot at being down there on the ground and doing that stuff and having those impacts. I was always less interested in doing some of the higher level yet important work, that your operations guys are planning and things like that. But because that afforded me another 2 years to to be completely like tactically operationally focused, even though our effects might be much greater than the level that we're working at. I still got that chance to like be with soldiers and like really lead them, as opposed to kind of filtering up through a staff or controlling things from kind of far away. So that was one of the appealing things to me. I don't know about you guys.
And definitely the extension of operational time, from being able to platoon leader to becoming a detachment commander in PSYOP. Being able to plan your own training. There's many more opportunities to go to specialty schools that can help you wherever it is you're going, whether it's like CENTCOM, PACOM, SOUTHCOM, and it definitely opened up a lot of doors for more opportunities, even if you want to go outside of SOF.
Yeah, that's a good point, because like when you're an infantry officer or a lieutenant, you get spoon-fed a lot of like, hey, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. When you're a detachment commander, you're completely making your own. You're looking at the mission. Hey, what do I need for my guys to survive, like to shoot, move, communicate, medicate, and then what are the things that like I need to do the actual PSYOP mission, and then you build that out yourself, and you have way more resources. So I think I went to 2 schools when I was in the 82nd, and then like over 4 years, and I probably went to like 6, 7 my first like 9 months, first year that I was in the PSYOP force. So yeah, there's a lot more opportunities to like hone yourself and be better.
That and the actual the NCOs in the regiment. I mean, like you're working with guys that have multiple degrees that are in many different areas. Like you have to get to know that detachment, your team that you're working with. Like there's so many unique skills that are even not that are weren't gained in the military. That like a lot of these guys, they don't. I think the Army needs them more than they need the Army. They could leave today and have no problem, making a very lucrative, a very, very comfortable living. So, like, you're working with NCOs that are here because they want to be here, I guess what I'm trying to say. So that's another aspect that makes it different. I'm not going to say it makes it more attractive than the infantry, because at the infantry, I guess you're working with that raw resource, I guess you will. It's a product that's coming right out of basic. You're some of those kids are looking at their platoon leader, company commanders as father figures almost, because these guys are coming from. Some of these kids might be coming from places that are
rough backgrounds, different lifestyles.
They look up to you.
The baseline is definitely higher, right? Because we have a selection that everyone goes through now, and so that's how you can call out some of the guys that like really aren't up to it. And so that's definitely like Dave was saying, a real big advantage, because now instead of having a platoon where I can only rely on like a few of like my NCOs, now I have all NCOs, and each one of those guys, like some of my guys soldiers have been more educated than I am, right? A lot of them have more training than I do, and when you approach a problem, it isn't just like, hey, I'm the lieutenant or I'm the officer, and so I'm going to plan everything out. It's, hey, I want to pull everybody else in. That's not something you can do, as well or as like efficiently when you have an infantry platoon. But I will say this, and I know we're all on board with this, but we all have like served with dudes that are like legitimate like heroes. And I'm not talking about like every soldier's a hero, but like guys who have like exposed themselves to extreme danger to like save their buddies and to serve their country. And so I don't want to just we don't want to like sit here and disparage the infantry branch or any other ones really. Even though I think probably every infantry soldier thinks that they're better than the other conventional branches.
They do.
Yeah,
that's a part of the indoctrination process when you go through the Wayward School at Fort Benning for boys. That's a part of that. So I definitely can appreciate that.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely like honor and salute those guys that we served with. But some of the in those groups there are some guys that you come in and you're like, man, like I can't believe this guy's here. Like he needs to be out. And that's not to say that we don't have duds in the PSYOP regiment. There's duds in the SF and civil affairs as well. But yeah, like the average or the mean is a lot higher quality.
Right.
Yeah, that and I think we all came into PSYOP around the same time, you know, and another thing that kind of was a catalyst to make that transition was when you were looking at Iraq and Afghanistan, that stuff was dying down. You know, you look to the future, you're looking at the company commanders or the majors in the 3 shop, or you know, a lot of those guys, like, they're not going to deploy again if they stay in the infantry. No. You know?
Right.
So you got your deployment, you were lucky to get it probably, and then the only way, like you said, to stay operational or to actually go out and be a maneuver element, it would be to actually get out of the conventional side.
Now, it's good that you said that, Dave, because it also brings up the fact that, like I said, my infantry battalion, like, we're an airborne infantry unit. We're highly trained, and we got assigned a mission to guard an airfield. Once you go PSYOP or once you go anything in the special operations community, like, you're too highly trained, and there's too few of you to put you against a mission that doesn't matter or no mission at all. And so, like, the operation tempo here is always very high. Like, guys are always going down range. They're coming back. Actually, one of the things I miss, right? In my first company, I was second platoon leader. First platoon leader was my best man at my wedding, and then third platoon leader was my groomsman. Because we're always together, we're always training, became like really, really tight. I love a lot of the other detachment commanders that I've served with, but because everybody's like TDY, somewhere else in the country training, or they're like downrange, and as soon as they get back, I'm going down on that mission. You know, you get a little bit less exposure, and so, like, that's one of the things that I miss a little bit is that camaraderie. But yeah, like, it is go once you come in, and then once you do go down range, like, the missions you're aligned against. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but like, the impacts you can have, you know, can be pretty incredible, and like, it can be very humbling, you know, to think like where you're at and who you're working with sometimes, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about it.
Okay. And so one of the things that tends to happen when guys move on in their career, especially when they change career fields, it tends to be some kind of a stigma that gets labeled with individuals. So I'm interested to know, from your personal experiences, did you guys experience any kind of a stigma leaving the infantry?
I have a lot to say about this, but I realize I've also done a lot of talking to this point, so I don't know that Connor and Dave have a shot at it first.
When leaving the infantry, you know, I told my company commander, and I was also in the S3 shop at the time, so I told my major, and they were supportive, but even before that, when I was a lieutenant, like, they asked me, hey, what do you want to do in the future? I was like, I want to go into special operations, and it had a negative connotation, especially with the battalion commander. I guess going forward from here is, you know, if you are watching, it's like, be careful who you tell what you want to do in the future, especially if you're leading an organization, because it can affect you, you know, affect you leaving, and also affect your evaluations as well.
Really? That's interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts, the other two gentlemen, Dave?
I don't think I really experienced any negative feedback from any of my superiors or anything like that, but I think maybe some self-imposed criticism, you know, with the mirror. There's something about taking the blue cord off, you know. It's like, you feel like, you know, when you retire, you're going to take your uniform off for the last time, and you tend to, like, romanticize what you just went, like, you look at all the schools and, you know, the friends that you're leaving behind in the infantry. You think about the good times and for a little while, and then you kind of snap out of it. You're like, well, you could be, you know, getting rained on somewhere in a mud hole and getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, or, you know, something like that. Eating MREs for months at a time. So
could be an Ohio State fan.
Yeah, could be that too.
Going to championship after championship every couple of years.
Yeah, you know, I think that's with anything. You know, it's like any change you make, you're going to think that the grass is green on the other side. So there's going to be some things you love about it, some things you hate. It's just all, but I think all in all, it was a good decision, and you grow a lot by making that kind of change. But yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I can relate to both their points. It was definitely tough. Yeah, especially like the first time I took my blue cord off my uniform. I think it was I didn't ever wear my ACUs all the way up until I finished the PSYOP pipeline, and I really did it for the first time, even after being for so long. There's something about that because there's a lot of sacrifice and there's a lot of things that represents. But specifically to Connor's point, no one told me I couldn't go. Which if you're out there and you're thinking about applying, like no one can tell you you can't, right? You can put in an application and that's protected. But I definitely felt like there was like almost like an undertone of like disappointment that you were like leaving the branch. And then there are some people that are actively like, oh, you're throwing away your career or you're making a poor decision. And, the advice I would give to the people that are potentially watching this, that are in our shoes back then, if you're fortunate, you're going to have like at least one or two people that you're going to meet that are going to be like mentors, and they're going to stay in touch with you throughout your career, and they're going to help you no matter what you're doing. But most of the people that are telling me that it wasn't a good move, right? Like once I left, I never heard from them again. And if I had stayed in the infantry, once they had like, finished up their time in command, I never would have heard from them again, Right. And so, if you're in that same spot that I was in, I don't feel like these people that really may not care about your career, like your personal career, don't let them change the fact that you're going to go in a direction that's going to give you more opportunities, more chances to accomplish like bigger and better things. Just don't let them hold you back. And the other thing too, like the Lieutenant Mafia, right, in my infantry battalion, it was well known that if you were going to go to SF, CA, or PSYOP, you never talked about that until it was your time to put in your packet. And that was because as soon as you said that like, hey, I want to be a PSYOP guy or I want to be an SF guy, then they would withhold like specialty platoons. So I was a rifle platoon leader, and then I did the mortar platoon, which was actually really awesome. I enjoyed that a lot. If I had told them early on I was going to leave the branch, I would have gone to like, assistant S3 or something like that. And so, and it's unfortunate that's the case, but like I think from the perspective of like your commanders and a lot of the people in the chain of command, they don't want to, what they see is waste development on you because you're no longer going to be in that branch, which honestly isn't true. And the real reason why I think they do, I don't think they're trying to like hold you back consciously. I just think that at a certain level, by you changing your branch, you're saying like I don't want to be you, right? And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but they're taking that the wrong way, right? Because like I don't want to be the company commander, I don't want to be the battalion commander, I don't want to follow in your footsteps, so like wherever you're at, And they just, I feel like a lot of people have a hard time like really guiding people. But that being said, I've also had experience with people that, hey, like, what do you need? Best of luck. Like I'll help you out. But it is a very, very tough thing. I just, and I'm repeating myself again. Just if you find yourself in that place, like don't let them stop you from doing it because you could be giving up, a lifetime, another 15, 20 years of doing some stuff, that's crazy cool, interesting, like all over the place. Just don't give that up easily.
No, so I experienced a little bit of that myself. Like I said, I was infantry before coming over to SYOP as well on the enlisted side, and same thing. The first time I took the cord off officially was when we graduated from the SYOP qualification course. And I actually got in an argument with one of my instructors because he's like, "You're not infantry anymore." And I said, "But I still have a secondary MOS. It says it on my, my enlisted record brief. I can wear the cord. I earned it. It's mine. You can't take it from me."
Yeah.
and that conversation, you probably know how it went. And the instructor won
Right.
won. But it was one of those humbling moments. It's like, well, I did all that. And now what? Did I make the right choice? Absolutely, I made the right choice. I'm glad I did. I'll do it again. I'll still do infantry again. If you took me back all the way to day one, I would do it the exact same way. I've loved every minute of it. And so it's kind of frustrating and disappointing. And I like the part that you mentioned, the mentor piece. I think when you start talking about those people that are the naysayers, or you're turning your back on the infantry, you're going to be one of them. They don't care about your career, and I will say that it's probably a testament to you as an individual, because if they're putting that much pressure on you, then you're probably a good leader that they want to keep. So they feel like they're losing something that, that's theirs. And so you are in a position to put yourself on a certain career track that is your choice, and you know that you're going to have some success, because if they're trying to hold you back a little bit, maybe they're being a little bit selfish because they want to keep you. And so maybe you in the back of your mind, you can say, look, they want me for a reason, and I know where my worth is, and I need to go this direction. So I would say it's something just to think about.
Yeah, I don't think the guys that try to hold you back are doing it out of malice or because they're not trying to help you out. But I just think that the place that they're coming from, it really isn't necessarily in your best interest, and they're not doing it purposely. But you just need to be careful for that, because it is your career, and I'm not sure how the saying goes exactly, but no one's going to manage your career better than you, right? And so you need to take charge of that, and you need to make the best decision for yourself and your family and for your goals.
Well, in the defense of the commanders or whoever you're working for, that if they're going to give you, if they're offering you a specialty platoon, whether it's scouts, mortars, what have you, obviously they're doing that because you're good at your job. Mm-hmm. You're a good infantryman, right? So
right.
Of course they want to keep you because you're good at what you do.
Exactly.
If you're good at what you're doing, you're going to make them look good at what they're doing. So I'm not saying that that's they're doing it for their own personal interest, but whatever organization or regiment that you're serving for, of course you want to see the future of that. Mm-hmm. Have a strong foundation and continue to do great things, right? So, you want to leave that legacy.
Right.
I made this unit, this much better than it was, or whatever. And I see it from both points of view. But, like I said earlier, when Iraq and Afghanistan started dying down, as far as operations over there, it's you want to go do something where you're actually making a difference, right? And I just, for me, it was just kind of, I felt like if I stayed in the infantry, that, those deployments were going to be few and far between. Right. So that's the reason that I left, So I guess maybe there was some stigmatism, maybe, but I just kind of maybe I just didn't really care to listen to it. It's, I made the decision and just kind of went with it.
At the end of the day, you got to do what makes you happy.
Right.
Yeah. Especially do your research, whether you're coming PSYOP, whether even it's another job, do your research, make sure you're going to like what you're going to do in the future, and just go for it.
Well, that's why, what you're doing here, Sergeant Gaines, is so important, because we didn't have, a podcast or PSYWAR to look to. We had to kind of do some research, and it was almost like a leap of faith at that point. So there's so, really, there's very little open source information that you can go to see exactly what the PSYOP regiment was about, right? So, a lot of that was just a leap of faith, and you roll the dice, you take a chance, and then let the chips fall where they do, and then you go from there. But so what you guys are doing, actually shedding some light on exactly what the Psychological Operations Regiment does globally, and how many different different jobs, because there's no one mission that's the same, right? You might be working in an embassy, or you might be out in the field. You never know. So a lot of guys will deploy. That's why you're deploying with a suit and body armor, right? Because you never know where you're going to be on any given day. So there's definitely it's a very unique MOS, or unique branch in the military.
And to add on to that, with this podcast for PSYWAR, how I found out about PSYOP, more about it, as an infantry platoon leader. I was in Germany, went to Joint Multinational Training Center, and I was in OCT working with the Lithuanians, and I met a civilian there because they put me in the PSYOP squad.
So that you said is that like JRTC, but in Europe?
Yeah,
okay.
In Europe.
Is it as famous there as JRTC is here?
Is it as much fun it means?
Well, it is. I don't know if you guys ever been to Michigan or been to like to a place that has a whole bunch of pine trees and forests, but it's like that.
I've been to North Carolina, yes.
Yes. Without all the pollen. But so yeah, it's not horrible like JRTC is. But I met this civilian there who happened to be an old PSYOPer, and he told me the most I had ever found out about PSYOP before even coming here to Bragg. Because looking online, it's like I couldn't find it.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
sir.
I was gonna say I found PSYOP on the internet. And I was like, this sounds kind of cool. And then I started talking to a SORB recruiter, and I was like, you're a recruiter, so I don't know if I trust you. So I was like, can you set me up a conversation with a couple currently serving PSYOP captains, so I can ask them the ins and outs. Hey, what's good about it? What's bad? And so I did exactly that. I met 2 guys. I ate lunch with them. One was kind of a nerd, and we did not really see eye to eye on a couple things. And the other guy was just like me. He came from an infantry background. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of the tactical PSYOP stuff that I was very interested in, and that's what really sold me. And I know that through the work that your crew does and a lot of other people, if that's something you want to go down that road, all you have to do is reach out, and you can talk to someone like us or someone like us that can help you make that decision.
No, absolutely. That's a very, very good point. As far as creating that awareness, the engagement opportunities, that's why we're doing this. We want to make sure that people that are out there can get a first-person perspective, see where they came from, see where you guys came from, and understand that there are other opportunities and there are ways to get that information aside from just trying to go to a recruiter, trying to fill that information void out in the information space. So some of the things you guys talked about actually brings us into the next topic, conventional life in the Army versus soft life, special operations life in the Army. What's the difference? What is it like, compared to being an infantry PL or an infantry, you guys all have different backgrounds in the infantry, but you all also have different backgrounds in PSYOP. So tell me about how those compare and contrast.
Well, I'll start off with, there's a lot, but I'll start off with one. So there's a lot less of the, what I call the time waster things, right? In the conventional Army, everything is regimented a certain way, and it's my way or the highway, which you probably sang as a cadence when you're running around at some point in your military career.
Absolutely.
And, so a lot of those things where it's hey, we're going to show up 15 minutes early for this, and we're going to have these inspections for that. And, you're really just doing these basically tasks where your hand, someone's holding your hand or you're holding somebody's hand to help them through very basic stuff. You very rarely see that here. Because again, everyone's selected, they're a higher quality guy. You're working with all NCOs and officers who have some experience. And so you don't need to do a lot of that stuff. So things that I found myself being very frustrated with in the conventional Army of why are we all formed up in the parking lot because the first sergeant found one cigarette butt out here, and now we're gonna walk across the whole thing, for an hour to check it. You don't do things like that over here. And there's some other relaxed things, but I'd also say the important piece of that is because there's a lot more trust and faith in you in the special operations community as opposed to in the conventional Army, because you've proved yourself a little bit, and as you go on your career, you continue to prove yourself. So there's no need to really crack down and have this totalitarian dictatorship over your life.
I don't say it's necessarily proving yourself. I think we have more mature soldiers, and so it just comes along with that that maturity. So you don't have to worry about following behind soldiers to do that. We'll say that's not to say that we don't do basic Army things.
Right.
There are things out there that we do. Do we stand in formation sometimes? Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But it's not because first sergeant found a cigarette butt. Usually it's because we're, talking to soldiers about somebody's recent trip somewhere or rewarding a soldier for something that they did on a deployment. And there's, I'll say for me, that's one aspect that I've really enjoyed. A lot of that kind of humdrum regimented stuff doesn't happen as often over here, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. You guys have any other insights?
I guess I would say that what you gain, there's some pluses and minuses, right? Because say from the infantry standpoint, you're getting these guys fresh out of basic, you're molding them. Obviously your squad leaders, platoon sergeant, they're really keeping a tight grip on these soldiers, right? And I'm not gonna say it's like you don't get as, like, there's no disrespect, but there's not as much the level of respect towards, say, for a captain or even a major from like a lower NCO side. You know, a lot of people, you have to be, it's a fine line between like being on first name basis to not, right? Because in the you got to think about what you're asking an infantry soldier to do and be ready to do. So when you tell them to do something, they better damn well do it a certain way, or else, you know, a bad day can be a really bad day, right? But in the same breath, on this side of the house, like, you know, you walk around the group or battalion footprints, like, no salute area, nobody's saluting each other. It's a lot. It's more like almost like a civilian organization than like a military structure. So, yeah, there's some times where you see, you think to yourself, man, you know, an ep.5 wouldn't be talking to a 03 or 04 like that. You know, it's not that they're disrespectful, but you know.
Yeah, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, like, you know, there's less superficial discipline as opposed to there is real discipline, right? So some of the stuff you see on the surface might not look like, like you'll see, and like I don't do that in my own organizations, but you'll see, like, you know, an E5 calling a captain by his first name or something like that. That respect is still there, all right? But that's just how that, you know, particular unit functions, right? And the officer is still calling the shots. The detachment sergeant is still, you know, like just like a platoon sergeant, right? Make sure the discipline and all that other stuff is up. But like the way that looks is a little bit different in the special operations community as opposed to, you know, like the regular Army. It's, like you said before, it's still the Army. You're still going to do dumb stuff sometimes, right? Because you can't get away from that. It doesn't matter where you're at. But at the end of the day, I think we've done a good job of letting go of some of the things that really don't matter, but we hold on tightly to the things that do, right? And that's, so guys make the right, like, moral, ethical decisions,
Right.
And can perform, you know, whether it's in combat or, you know, do the right things, like in an embassy setting or interagency setting and things like that.
I think what a lot of things boil down to, though, is a lot of things are left of personal responsibility in special operations that in the conventional side are not. Like physical fitness, for example. So that's a lot of times that should be a personal responsibility. Like physical fitness, like PT in the morning, okay, it's like that's like to maintain a certain level. Like if you want to excel, you have to do more than that outside
Right.
of, you know, the work hours. And so I guess even after like you get selected or what have you, you're constantly being assessed. You know, and if like the point I was trying to make as far as like you know, like the discipline aspect, it's like you're still selecting yourself out of the regiment, if you will. You know, if you're given enough rope to hang yourself with, or enough to, you know, you're given left and right limits that are pretty wide, that give you the opportunity to do some really unique training and things of that nature. So,
yeah, huge differences I saw, like, you know, when I deployed to Afghanistan, went with my whole platoon, but when I deployed to the embassy, I went with one person, just me and another guy.
Right.
You know, the autonomy that you have as a PSYOPer is enormous. It's enormous, but you have to know your job. That's why you build your own training plans. You know, it's like, what do I need to know before I go to this place? You know, who do I need to know? What do I need to do? You know, doing combat patrols with Afghan Uniform Police or the ANA, or, you know, you're talking with, you know, on the other side for PSYOP, like at an embassy, you're talking with, like, whether it's the ambassador, you know, you're talking with the U.S. You know, State Department officials. You just need to know specific things, you know, in PSYOP, where on the other hand for the infantry, you know the specific infantry tasks that you need to do and that you've trained up on for like at least a year before deploying. Those are big differences that I saw, especially with the deployment time frame. It's shorter and soft, where, in the infantry was 9 to 12 months, but just depending on what time frame you did enter the army.
Connor's point is, I think, one of the reasons why people really don't understand or know much about PSYOP, because it varies so widely. So all the stuff he was talking about, I have like little or no experience with. All my stuff was very like tactically focused. So, I mean, you could enter like, we actually graduated at the same time in the course and went completely different directions. So the stuff I'm having my guys do, there's definitely similarities there because we're still PSYOPers. But like what I'm like focusing on might be different from what he's focusing on. You'll have some teams that are very heavy into like cyber and social media stuff. You'll have other teams, and then they're very light on the tactical things, right? Because they're probably not going to like handle a gun on that deployment because they're working in a place where they can like leave on the weekends, right? And like walk around, right? Mm-hmm. And then on my side of it, it's like we're going to have guys operating with Rangers or special forces and things like that. So I need to be a lot heavier on those types of things. And I want to be clear on this point too. PSYOP is not a offshoot of like the lethal capabilities of like Ranger Regiment or special forces. We want our guys to be proficient and to be able to handle themselves in a combat situation. But that's not their primary job. But we can't do our job in a lot of cases if we're a liability. So we need to get ourselves up to that point, so that hey, like we can bring these dudes on. This is like a fairly dangerous mission, but he's got a specific purpose and task to be on here, and we feel comfortable taking him. When I was an infantry officer, we were doing a training scenario one time with some chemical dudes that came, and like they were all ate up. They had their I remember specifically their
Soup sandwich.
Yeah, they're like a load-bearing thing, for the civilians. So you understand this? It's like where you hang all your magazine pouches and stuff like that. The only thing they had on there was a canteen pouch, right? There's no extra magazines.
Right? Water.
There's nothing for like
That's why the infantry's there to take care of them, right?
Yeah. Well, but I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, if this is a real mission, I would not take them. I would rather have them teach me what I need to know, because if I take them with me, now I have to worry about this guy like shooting himself or like falling out of the formation and now have a casualty on top of like some chemical issue, right?
Sure.
And so with our PSYOP guys, we want them to be, highly proficient in like the shoot, move, communicate, medicate stuff, right? So they can integrate with those teams. But we're not training them to be like, oh yeah, we'll just throw them into the stack on the room or anything like that. We wanted them to be, capable of going out and doing that job. When I was in Afghanistan, I would go out with my task force, and if I showed up like that, right, they're not going to take me, and now I can't do it like an important aspect of that job.
Right.
Bottom line, don't be a liability.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to point out, it kind of touches your two earlier points, as far as the mission type sets and just that what I'll call a comfortable respect. The first name basis with your superiors. You see it a lot in our community. You see it a lot across Army Special Operations. And I think it kind of ties to what you were talking about. If I was going to guess, I would say that other person that you were on that mission with was an NCO. Yeah. And I think the reason that happens is we build that bond and that camaraderie between the officer and NCO corps very closely, because it's not just the PL and the platoon sergeant. It's the detachment sergeant and everybody. And our detachments are so much smaller than an infantry platoon, and a lot of times you're going to find yourself on a mission where it's just you and an NCO, and so that bond, you build that bond, and that's your battle buddy. That's to be cliche. So I think that's where that kind of comes from, and that's the guy or gal that you look to your left and right for when you need assistance on that mission. So I think that's kind of where that comes from. And I mean, I've experienced it. I've never had a doubt. To touch to your point with that aspect. Never had a doubt who was in charge, because that's my YC. Mm-hmm. But whether it's Jane or Jim, they're in charge, and we're working together to accomplish this mission. And again, it spans the spectrum. I've seen kind of everything that you guys have talked about, whether it was with an embassy or in combat operations, and that bond is always there, and that's really your crew, your battle buddies. And I really think, for me, from the enlisted perspective, that was something that was new to me, and for me it was refreshing because I had officers that were were engaging me and wanted to know what my thoughts were. They wanted to know how I thought we should train, because you guys are the ones creating the plan. And so for me, that was really new, but it was refreshing because now I'm having a say in the things that we're doing. So, unless you guys anything else on that?
Add, yeah, when deployed to Afghanistan, I was also, when I moved out of the platoon leader spot, they put me as a base defense. When I went to, transitioning when I was in PSYOP, when I did go to the embassy, that base defense, what I learned from that, base defense of a forward operation base, base defense of an embassy, it translated over, so I was able to bring what I learned from the infantry into that security type of environment. Because when you go to embassies, they have the Marine Guards there, and at some embassies, like we've seen in the past, they get overran, and we bring in that also that specific training to either help augment them or help them with their security plans as well.
So we're going back and forth, different experiences between SOF and conventional. Do you guys have any other thoughts or unique experiences that kind of show or highlight the difference between the two?
Yeah, I'll start by, I'll say that the three of us sitting here, we've been afforded the opportunity to go to a language school for 6 months and get paid while you're doing it, of course.
Right.
That I don't think, being in the infantry, you never get that opportunity to learn a language on the military's dime for 6 months straight. I mean, that's just something you would never have the conventional side put that kind of investment in your education to do the job that they're asking you to do. With that, I knew that staying in the infantry, chances are you're going to get sent to Iraq or Afghanistan. Those are choice A or B. That's basically where you're going to go, right?
Modern era, yes.
Right. So I like the idea of being able to see more of the world than I had previously seen. And, SAP's given me the opportunity to do that. Like I've been through Eastern Europe, like Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, Hungary, Germany. Obviously, in Eastern Europe, you're able to apply. Like my language is Russian, for example, so I was able to apply that language. So saying in the infantry, I wouldn't have gained that additional education for one thing, and I wouldn't have seen that area of the world, I think.
So I'm interested because I've seen a few training events of late, conventional infantry units doing joint operations, training operations in some of these regions of the world, South America, Eastern Europe. What's the difference? Like they're going and they're doing these training operations. You went to some of these places in Eastern Europe. What's the difference? Why is it better, so to speak, better
Better than being,
or different?
I would say that a lot of times, you're training with different units. I would say not every time, but a lot of the times you're training with a partner nation's special operations forces in some aspects. At least that's what my experience was. Some of you guys might have some different experiences with some of these other big exercises that have been going on, but that was my experience. I wasn't. I feel like if you're deploying as a conventional force, you're not as tied in with any of the other countries. Like you're not working side by side with the partner nation forces. You're still, say if you're a platoon leader, for example, you're working with your platoon. You're not talking to any of the other officers that are in a partner nation force. At least that wasn't my experience. So if you guys can expand on that, maybe you guys different experiences, but I have not.
So I know you guys have all had different career tracks in PSYOP, and you spent time in Europe as well, but in a different capacity.
So yeah,
or
in the infantry, I was in stationed out of Germany. In PSYOP, I've been to a lot of Asia.
okay,
Bangladesh, Singapore, Thailand, conducting either influence operations or joint training operations in Thailand with the Royal Thai Army, Marines, U.S. Marines, Air Force, Navy, just doing a lot of information-related capability type of exchanges between the Thai Army and the joint U.S. military, and conducting also humanitarian assistance, which PSYOP also does. If we ever have a national emergency, say specifically, what was it, Hurricane Maria that hit Puerto Rico? We had PSYOPers go down there. I think you know some of that. Go down there and help out the civilian population in order to restore basic human needs, water, food, tell people where to go, if they need assistance. Also, jumping around here, the training opportunities. So in the infantry, like, I remember first off as a second lieutenant, once I got to Germany, got my platoon, we were in the field for like the next 2 to 3 months, as soon as I got there. And
I mean, it's vacation in Germany, right?
yeah. It rains a lot, I just want you to know that.
Sounds terrible for you.
There's no half-liter beers, just sitting around in the forest waiting for it. But, on the other side, PSYOP, for training opportunities, we might just send one person to specific social media analysis school that costs like upwards of $50,000 just for one person.
Okay.
There's a lot of more training opportunities, for individuals, based on what they're going to be doing in their careers in PSYOP to go to, and what else you guys got?
I'm curious in your aspect. So you've seen kind of the conventional training mindset in Europe, and we're talking a different theater of operation. But you said you've experienced some of that in the Indo-PACOM theater of operations. Were you able to see at that point in time how you were working? Were you able to see soft and conventional working and kind of the differences in that aspect? Like, did you see that as a part of the things you did in the Indo-PACOM area?
Yeah, there's a lot of coordinations going on between either us and other countries, or it's just a huge coordination piece. Because when you're traveling, from the U.S. over into the Indo-PACOM area, you're losing a day, or you're actually gaining a day. Because from here to, let's just say, South Korea, for instance, we're gaining 13 hours. And recently, I've been planning a training for PSYOP in South Korea in order to work with the South Koreans and our forces that we have right now.
Okay, so like you're a captain planning this exercise of sorts. Comparatively speaking to a captain in the infantry, is that expected? Like, would that be the same?
I guess from you guys chime in on this too. Like from operations standpoint, when you're working in the S3, yes, you should be able to do that. But as a captain in the infantry, being a company commander, I believe it's no, I don't think so.
When I was an infantry officer, I think the one time we trained off post, we did an airfield teaser mission where we jumped into Eglin Air Force Base, did that for a couple of days, went back. That was one training opportunity in about 4 years. Whereas, seeing this like just in our own PSYOP group itself, you'll have guys that are going like around the country, like on the regular, to do like collective training. You'll have them going around the country, around the world, to do like some of the individual stuff. Dave brought up a really good point about language. I mean, we'll send guys and they'll go there for a month to like refresh and like be immersed in that language and culture to learn more. So I mean, we don't have an endless budget for like the training opportunities and stuff, but we have a lot more, and there's a lot more opportunities. So like when I was an infantry officer, I was limited by the fact that if no one in my platoon knows how to do something or in my company, I can't train that. Whereas, hey, if I have a very complex problem I need to solve, and no one owns that knowledge, you know, I can outsource that. We can reach out to a different organization or unit, or we can reach out and contract it and have that come in. And so it really allows you to specialize in things or to build yourself out for like some of these like very complicated, you know, gray mission sets that you get where it's like, you know, a lot of ambiguity and, you know, it's not as simple as like, you know, what some units might be accustomed to.
So kind of along your point, and it kind of links to what Connor was saying, training opportunities, you're playing this operational exercise with partner nations as a captain. You guys jumped into an exercise
In Florida. And
in
that
Florida.
was like planned by a brigade. Yeah.
Who planned that? You know,
Right.
was that a field grade? Was that I mean, you said by brigade, so
Yeah.
you're talking about 2 echelons up,
Yeah.
planning your company movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're a captain that is putting together something that's going to affect several echelons and really globally, if you think about it, because we're working with our allies. I think that's a key point for somebody who's looking to have an impact, because you're a captain, you know, and I remember, you know, I think one of you guys brought it up earlier about, you know, the enlisted guys looking up at the officers as like a parent figure. Yeah, absolutely. But I couldn't imagine when I was a private or a young NCO seeing my lieutenant or even my company commander planning some of the stuff that I've seen the captains in our force plan. And so I think that's a big thing for somebody to understand, that you're coming forward into a force that gives them the opportunity to have more than just a impact at a platoon or detachment level. It's a ripple effect that's going to happen, and it's going to happen for years. Go ahead, sir.
I just think in the infantry, you're focused on the strategic or on the tactical aspects of things. In PSYOP, you have the opportunity to make impacts operationally and on the strategic level from, you know, just being a detachment. Like you can impact operationally and strategically. In the infantry, you're kind of more focusing on the tactics. I think that's basically what it boils down to. And also, was, you know, going on to all the different schoolings that Eric and Connor were talking about. Like, there's enough different types of schools available where it's, when you're coming up in PSYOP, it's almost like choose your own adventure. Like, you can kind of, there's enough, like, as long as you can go to a school and succeed, the regiment will keep sending you to schools as long as you want to keep going to them. And you can kind of steer your career in the direction that you want by gaining those different certifications and qualifications to be applied to a certain mission set.
Yeah, you'll see some guys that get like really into the deception stuff. Like that's kind of where they try to like guide their career to, and they have a pretty good degree of freedom to do that. You have other people that get really into some of the other like information related capabilities, so they're branching out so they can do, you know, some cyber and electronic warfare type things. You have other guys that say like more like traditional PSYOP, but yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, there's so many missions and there's so many like things that like no one can be a specialist in everything.
Right.
And so a lot of guys, like once they find what they really like, they'll kind of hone in on that and they'll be like the guy on that thing. And that's actually kind of a cool thing because, you know, one infantry platoon from another, like, yeah, some are better than others, but they basically do the same thing. Whereas, like, when you look at some of the SOP detachments, like, they can train themselves to be different, but a lot of them have, like, a focus. And that focus is dictated by whatever mission they're on. So I can't necessarily take one team, like right now and put them against a different mission because the skills that they need and the talent they need may be different, right? But to you know, Dave's point earlier when he was talking about, hey, you have, for regular infantry guys, you have option A, Afghanistan, and option B, Iraq. I still got option A twice. so I went to Afghanistan twice, but for me, like, I really like that. Like, I like working with the tactical aspect. And, you know, when we were discussing earlier, the first thing I brought up was, hey, like, things are a bit more relaxed, a little bit more easygoing. And it's a good thing. It's definitely something I thought about that I wanted to change when I was an infantry officer. But that's like a nice to have thing. It's not the major reason. Like, my number one difference that I see between special operations and conventional, and the most important thing to me is the impact that you can have. And you talked about that a little bit earlier. So, like, on my last deployment, I was working on a joint task force with different countries, different, you know, agencies and like military forces from our own country. And like, I mean, I'm talking about like people that like, even civilians would know who they are because they're represented very frequently in like video games and movies, right? Like, it's a very humbling experience. And working with those guys, we had people coming in all the time. We had members of Congress. I think we briefed the British version of the SOCOM commander, foreign ministers. These guys are coming in, and then here I am as like, you know, I would probably say like not quite a senior captain yet, but I'm briefing them on how we do information operations, how we do PSYOP, like how we're going after some of our adversaries. And these guys are like real decision makers. And when you have like a congressperson that's asking you like, what do you guys need? Right? That's a little bit different than when you're a company commander and it's like your battalion commander being like, what do you need? And, oh, by the way, like, my budget for this is, you know, $1,500 and, you know, and whatever other constraints they have. And so, like, a regular infantry captain is not going to have, it would be very rare for him to have an experience like that. So, like, doing those things, like being part of some of these missions that, you know, generals and people that are commanding whole theaters are paying attention to and seeing, like, that to me was really cool and was like one of the things that I thought like made me proud to be like who I was and what I was doing, because, you know, if I was pulling base security, I probably wouldn't get that same, you know,
Right.
you know, gratification.
Definitely a different level of engagement, and as such, different level of appreciation. So it is very different. So I want to kind of move along. You guys spent a variety of years in the infantry, all, you know, Ranger School, different infantry skill sets. I think you said mortars, you said scout platoon. So you provide a lot of different things to the infantry regiment. Looking at moving into the PSYOP regiment, has any of that been beneficial to your PSYOP careers?
I'm really hoping for the time where I can, as a PSYOPer, I can use my mortar experience in some way. That would be pretty awesome. Realistically, like for me, a lot of times, like, you know, like PSYOP is supporting lots of different people at different times. In my experience, it's always been like different other military special operations commanders. Having that infantry background helps me speak that same language to them. Mm-hmm. So like they have a vision, but they don't really know what they want. But I've like walked that walk, or like seen what they're looking for, and I can better like conceptualize like, hey, this is what's important to them, this is what isn't, and so it's easier to get them what they actually need. It's also a lot easier too to, you know, I think to like make some of the inroads and build rapport with them, because you have some like similar experiences and some
Right.
similar background. And then, like I was saying before, you know, you may find yourself, if you're in Afghanistan or another war zone where, you know, your tactical proficiency does have some bearing on your ability to do the mission. And that also makes it a lot simpler because you already have like that foundation, right? Mm-hmm. And so that if they're comfortable, it makes your job like exponentially easier to go out and, you know, do the different things you need to do.
Yep.
As long as the commander who's in charge asks for an effect, you know, like Eric was saying, like we'll be able to explain or recommend, you know, what to do in order to accomplish the objective. You know, no matter whether it's in an embassy, you know, it's in a training environment, whether it's in Afghanistan or Iraq, you know, because you got to know what equipment you have at your disposal in order to achieve objectives.
No, I've personally had two unique experiences kind of tied to both yours. Your infantry experience with base defense, because again, you understand how to shoot, move, communicate, basic infantry skills. We got integrated at one of the embassies that I went to into the security plan, and it was once they found out they had extra soldiers at the embassy. They're like, you will be here. Here's your radio. Flag goes up. This is your point of where you need to come to help defend the embassy. So that, and it was because we were soldiers mainly, and there's a certain expectation that comes with that. But more so with kind of your point, my very first PSYOP deployment, I actually experienced that. I got pushed out with an SF, Operational Detachment Alpha, ODA, and within like the first week or so, we were on the ground, and we got into a pretty gnarly engagement. And just so happened my team had a lot of prior infantry experience, and we were shoot, move, and communicate, doing what we needed to do as a part of the element. And we got back to the base. They were surprised, to say the least. They were wondering where we had been training and how we knew the things we knew, and it just goes back to the basic foundation of being a soldier. And because we had been infantry, it's been ingrained into you, over and over, all those battle drills. And so, I've felt, from that aspect, and even as I've grown in the ranks and talking to those higher level commanders, it's been extremely beneficial because not only is it a rapport builder, I can actually help them understand how to get the effects that you were talking about, sir. So I see it as an added value, moving over into this regiment, having had that before. Well, gentlemen, we're coming to the end here. Before we cut it loose, I wanted to make sure that you guys didn't have any other insights or tips or advice for anybody that's out there that's currently in the infantry lieutenants, even maybe some of the newly promoted captains that are thinking about PSYOP, thinking about RSOF. You guys have any thoughts for those out there?
I would just say, you're in charge of your own career, right? And so, when in charge, stay charged. Don't let anyone guide you off the path if you think that this might be the right thing for you. The pipeline, if you're worried about, hey, like maybe I'm not good enough or cut out for it, the training is pretty solid. You're going to go through, you're going to get the skills that you need. If you want to shoot people like with a gun and kill people with a gun, you should be going SF. But if you want to kill our enemies in different ways, or you actually want to legitimately help other people, I mean, both of those missions are equally important in the PSYOP community. I think this is the place to go. And so, been highly rewarding for me. And I think if you want to make a career out of it, promotion potential is actually really great here, and we can ask that question to a recruiter or follow up with one of us, and we can go down that rabbit hole. But if you want to make a career out of it, it's a great opportunity. If you not sure if you want to do that, this can also set you up very well for success outside. So definitely check it out. Do some more research. I'm looking forward to seeing more podcast episodes. I think we're going to talk about a lot of other different things. So, again, thank you very much for having us on here, and I hope that there's infantry officers that are out there watching this that are going to, this is going to be helpful for them.
I appreciate you guys coming out.
Yeah, I just want to say, what you guys are doing here is extremely beneficial. Like, I wish that we had something like this to watch, like when I was first trying to come up into the PSYOP regiment. So, the only thing I can say for anybody trying to make that decision is, tune in to podcasts like this and reach out to you guys. And I'm sure that you can link them into any one of us or countless other captains that can shed some light on any questions that they have. But we're out here. I'm willing to talk to anybody who's trying to make that transition. I'll give them, honest answers on any questions that they have. So, yeah.
Sir, you make a valid point. Really great point. Honestly, it's easy if you're at Fort Bragg. You can walk down the street and come talk to us. But if you're not at Fort Bragg, hitting us up on our social media accounts, we'll gladly put you in touch with somebody. So, I think there's plenty of people out there that are willing to share their stories like you three gentlemen. So definitely a good point.
Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Gentlemen, anything else?
Complete.
Remarks complete.
I'll do it.
I appreciate you guys coming out and giving your insight and helping out future lieutenants and captains coming in the PSYOP regiment. With that said, as always, thank you for watching PSYWAR. And this is our profile series. So like, share, subscribe, hit us up in the comments, and look out for our next episode of PSYWAR Profiles.